Hey everybody, welcome to the IT On Call podcast. I'm your host, Ross Feldman, or as my clients know me, Ross to the rescue. I'm here with Aaron Hutchinson of NC Farm Bureau Insurance. How's it going today, Aaron?
Mr. Ross, how are you, sir?
I'm doing quite well. It's been a busy few weeks in the beginning of the year for me, and we've got a lot to catch up on. We're part of a networking group, Carolina's Referral Group. Spent a year with that group, which has been quite interesting. Got you roped into that, which is good.
We
got you involved, and you and I connected on the networking circuit, which is something in Charlotte that we've got a lot going on. The networkingnewsletter.com is now changing names to charlottenetworkinghub.com. So we're now pushing out links to the website instead of doing the newsletter to get the list of networking events out there for those who are in Charlotte. It's a great transition. We're building out automation in the website so you can sign up and get access to the events immediately instead of having to wait for the monthly newsletter. So we've got a lot going on with that. There's a couple new networking groups I'll be checking out this week and getting around Charlotte that way. Aaron, where are you from originally?
Yeah, so I'm from Charlotte, specifically Mint Hill. My family's from Mint Hill, and just always been around this area. I've moved away a couple of times, but I've never gone too far, and of course somehow circled back.
Keep bringing you back in. Absolutely. Yeah, you have a very fascinating story that I wanted to share with the audience. You are an insurance agent with NC Farm Bureau, but you didn't start as an insurance agent. You started as a law enforcement officer, and even before that. So tell me, how'd you get started in that journey?
Yeah, so my story has had a lot of chapters. Even before law enforcement, I had tried on a couple of different hats, just trying to find my place. I knew law enforcement was the big goal. That was the one on the horizon. And finally, I figured that out in 2015. I took a job as a detention officer, and that led into taking a job as a police officer after I got my training. So the training for those two jobs is a little different. And I got my, what we call in North Carolina, your BLET, your basic law enforcement training. And then I was able to be a patrol officer, and I landed in the city of Albemarle, North Carolina. That's
quite awesome. And that's the thing, is that you're east of Charlotte. So you get to see a little bit different kinds of vibes out there. I'm southeast of Charlotte. I'm in Monroe, but not too far from Albemarle, and I've got friends in Midland.
Right.
And it's one of those that, we're all connected. We're all Charlotte, but we all still have different, law enforcement agencies that we're a part of. I used to live in the county of Union County, which was outside the city limits of Monroe. So the sheriff was responsible for our neighborhood. But now I've lived in the city limits of Monroe. So I'm now with the city of Monroe Police. So, change of jurisdiction for me, but still working a lot with those law enforcement individuals. How did the community welcome you when you were a new officer? Did you have a lot of hazing for you getting on board?
The hazing came from within the four walls, but down there, especially where it's a smaller agency, everybody around this area relates to Charlotte, and Charlotte is, if I'm not mistaken, the largest agency in the state. I think there are around 17 or 1,900 officers, and where I worked, we had 50 or 60 sworn officers. And you may think, well, that's a lot. That's really small. That's a lot smaller than Charlotte. It's actually still one of the larger agencies. Most of your small municipalities only have maybe a dozen to 20 officers. Like Locust, for instance, I think they're sitting around 20 or 25. Like the cities of Baden and Norwood, they may have a dozen officers, one or two working at a time. So in the grand scheme of things, it's still a pretty big agency. Stallings falls into that, in that realm too. But the hazing didn't come from the streets. It came from within the four walls of the police department. But it's a good group of guys, and I was sad to leave them behind.
There's always the fraternal order, the camaraderie. That definitely, once an officer, always an officer. You guys know the lingo, and you have the haircuts and all that sort of stuff. But definitely. How did the chapter happen between law enforcement and insurance agent?
So, good friend of mine that we were actually friends before I went into my BLET. Her and I somehow managed to wind up in the same academy together, and we became pretty tight. She ended up leaving law enforcement behind, and she found Farm Bureau. And I called her for a quote on a Tuesday afternoon, and I just wanted my auto insurance quoted. And she said, you're pretty good at talking to people. You're a people person. You should check out insurance. And I was like, well, I don't know. I really enjoy being a police officer. She goes, well, are you happy? I was like, well, I'm happy enough. So after chatting with her a little bit that Tuesday afternoon, finding out the schedule and the financial incentive, of course, I was sitting in her boss's office Friday. So it kind of just happened out of nowhere. Wasn't planning it. But I'm very thankful for the opportunity that Farm Bureau has been able to provide for myself. So,
yeah. Then we were talking earlier about your book of business, that you had to inherit a book of business from somebody else, and you had to go around and actually meet all those customers. You definitely spend a lot of time with that face-to-face time, which I think can be appreciated these days. I mean, in the world of the Geicos and the Progressives, where you just call an 800 number and you don't have your individual agent, I feel like you provide that individual service that is a miss sometimes in the insurance field.
absolutely. And that's what Farm Bureau they really preach. We're not like Progressive or Geico. You can absolutely call our office number and get insurance, and that's fine. But what you're really getting is an agent that knows who you are. Not every agent does this. I'd say most of our agents do, but we have our number. We give out our cell phone number. If you're my client, you go in my phone under a special tab for clients, and if you call me, I know who's calling. So it's not a 1-800 number, and we're not going to do the name your price and go through and just if you have limits of liability, you should understand why you have those limits of liability. We see it all the time where clients come to price shop, but you might save some money, but what are you giving up?
And I think that's the thing, is that there's just all too often it's commoditized. I'm in the IT industry, and sometimes our services are commoditized when it comes to MSPs, managed service providers. It's basically, okay, how much are you going to charge me? And I was like, well, I'm going to charge you an X amount, but there's also going to be a service that comes along with that. That service tier is what you're buying into. It's not just buying a commoditized offering. But I think that's something that we definitely need to touch into, that the state minimums, what people have, what have they looked at their insurance? They've been looking at their bill. Right. They get that monthly or quarterly or yearly, depending on how they pay. But have they really looked at what they're paying for? Right? What should they be paying for?
That's absolutely true. And you referenced state minimums. That's a hot button topic right now, because the Department of Insurance, through the legislation through North Carolina, has just raised the state minimums. So it used to be $30,000, $60,000 with $25,000 property damage minimum. And the next step up from that is now the state minimum, which is $50,000, $100,000, and $50,000. So I think it was a change that needed to be had. I think most insurance agents would agree. And it doesn't make a huge difference on people's premiums, but it makes a huge difference in the coverage for the policies. I mean, there's not too many cars rolling around anymore that fall into those categories. So I think the limits needed to be raised, and I think it's been a good move.
Yeah, I mean, because a new car today is $60,000, and so if your insurance is only covering $30,000, you're not going to be buying someone half a new car. They're going to be expecting you to buy a whole new car when you're at fault. So it's something that you have to definitely be careful of. We deal a lot with risk and risk mitigation. I have conversations with business owners about how much risk are you willing to accept as a business owner when it comes to your IT and your security that's involved in that. And that's the same in the insurance game, is how much risk are you going to accept, right? Like with the liability coverage.
Right. Yeah, and your bodily injury. I mean, If you had state minimums $30,000 for your bodily injury liability, if you have to get life flighted, that's a fraction.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, out on a helicopter. Yeah, exactly.
right.
That's no crazy. The Farm Bureau being a local agency, talk more about the benefits of having, you know, we had the floods going on in North Carolina, so North Carolina was affected, but all the policies are written for all of North Carolina. Talk more about it being an NC based agency instead of being a national agency.
Absolutely. So North Carolina Farm Bureau is just that, Farm Bureau of North Carolina. There are farm bureaus in other states, and they are their own company in those other states. So everybody that works for Farm Bureau is a resident of Farm Bureau. Your insurance agents, your adjusters, the folks that you may call on the phone. We have a home office in Raleigh where all the big dogs work, and of course, a lot of claims go there, and some some of your bookkeeping and things like that all take place. But we don't outsource adjusters. We don't outsource agencies. We do have a brokerage department for things that we can't place in house. But even your local agent takes care of that. And the way we divide things up are by county. Every 100 counties in North Carolina have at least one Farm Bureau office. Some have multiple. Here in Union County, we have 3. I believe Mecklenburg has 3 or 4, and then your more rural counties, they may only have 1. Like for instance, Anson County only has 1. But all of our agents, all of our adjusters, we're all local. We're all North Carolina folks, and that's what we're looking to do. We're taking care of North Carolina folks. The reason that that's important is because the wildfires in Los Angeles and the hurricanes in Florida, they don't influence our pricing. Some bigger companies, not to name any, but the larger companies that are nationwide, and I don't mean that specifically, but nationwide, when something occurs that's a catastrophe in one part of the country, it may affect the rates in another because they're trying to make up that dollar.
Yeah, tremendously. And that's the thing is providing local support, what that means. I'm still running into companies, organizations, associations that have IT that's outsourced, that's outside the Charlotte area, which still surprises me. But I still run into that. I feel like you want to have that local touch. You want to have that individualized attention. And then if you need something, that they're available at your beck and call. When it comes to the skills of law enforcement and insurance agent, what skills do you feel like overlap between the two that you've seen in your experience so far?
Well, the number one that comes to mind is communication, being able to have a conversation with folks. Sometimes you have to have conversations they don't necessarily want to have. That used to be easier because I expected it. And now, usually when those conversations are happening, I don't expect it, or, a bill has gone up and I have no control over it. So, price increases happen. But a lot of times people they don't read their mail, or they just see it come out, and you have to have those conversations or what may have you. But there's definitely a lot of skills that transfer over.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that like communication is the foundation of our entire industry. Of if we're not able to communicate, then we're not doing business. I had Glenn on, and he was talking about communication and the transfer of emotion and all that sort of thing. So it's very involved in the whole sales process, but not calling it sales. It's calling it solutions, providing
Right.
solutions.
Glenn's a fascinating guy.
He's a fascinating guy. He was good to have on here. It's good to have you on here. The law enforcement. If somebody wanted to get into law enforcement, what kind of advice would you be giving them today with your knowledge that you have so far?
You should do ride-alongs. You should understand what you're getting into. You should understand that you are going to be underappreciated, and you should understand that not only are you going to receive pushback from the community just as being a police officer, but there's going to be adversity within the department. I think that's
Hmm.
normal. Um, there's there's going to be people that don't see eye to eye with you. Oftentimes, you're going to work with them and being able to problem solve and communicate in that. But I think it's a very rewarding career. Uh, I chose to keep my job part time as a police officer because of that. I,
Hmm.
I I really love the people of Albemarle. I enjoy um, the people I work with down there, and I didn't want to give that up. So I'm afforded the opportunity to work one day a month down there and maintain my certification. But uh, they understand when the rubber meets the road. This is my career, and they don't require too much of me, I should say.
Yeah, exactly. What you're keeping your ear to the ground and still getting involved with something that you have a passion for. The insurance agent position. What was something that was exciting or new, or you were surprised about that you found out later on as you're running as an agent?
So it's not as simple as just um, putting in a car, like a VIN number, and okay, Ross Feldman drives this, and here's your price. There's a lot more to it than that. They look at several different factors when evaluating either a home to insure or a vehicle to insure. Um, can be a little tedious at times, looking at driving histories, and then you want to look at license and how long that person's been driving, who else lives in the household. So I was surprised to see how much work goes into that just to give somebody a quote.
Hmm.
Some clients call up here and they'll just say, "Hey, I have a 2020 Ford Explorer. I need insurance on it. How much is that going to cost?" It's like that. That is so far from not enough information. So I guess that's what I've learned is that, it's a very detailed process, and um, just going through those steps of getting that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you learn that on the job. So, we talked a little bit earlier before the podcast about on the job training that, it's one of those that you can get the basic law enforcement degree, but that doesn't give you the experience of, as you said, being in the car. And you can sell insurance, but you've got to then learn about all the different avenues and options and features and things like that. So, how does the continuing education going? Like, how are you learning about how are you learning the latest news on the insurance industry?
Yeah, so there's a couple of good programs, designations that you can take. I'm going to begin mine this year, just because I'm through that 2-year probationary period with Farm Bureau. So now I'm going to be here. They know I'm going to be here, and I can start getting my education. It's a little different than a college degree. Getting your designations, probably much like your certifications that you have with IT,
Yep.
and that gives you a lot more arrows in the sheath to know what you're looking at when you're trying to discuss things with folks. There is continuing education in insurance. We have to have so many hours per year, and that's checked on a every 2-year basis. So some you may need 1 year, and some you may need the next, but they culminate to a 2-year quota, I guess is how you say it. And that keeps you abreast of everything. And of course, everything else is done via email and just interagency communication. So
Yeah, and that's the thing is that there's a lot to be had that when you're talking to someone who's an insurance agent, you're talking to someone who understands the offering and the field. And it's one thing for you to go out on your own and just try and book something online, but you really don't know what you're buying or what you're getting into, and if you're getting coverage enough. Your network that you've been working on, you're from Mint Hill originally. You've been in the area. You've been doing that. How have you been expanding your network to be able to get more clients in the door and get more quotes started?
yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest networking tool is online.
Hmm.
I've met you through networking. We were in a small group in the Charlotte area before you invited me to the one in Union County, which just so happens my office was in Union County, so it worked out great.
Yeah.
Um, Building up those contacts, and you're really the the best example of it, because I think you know a guy for everything.
I know a guy.
And then also
I have a
being an
guy.
asset to those folks, you know,
Yeah.
because now if one of my clients is starting a company or they're working with something and they have a need for IT, I know somebody who's trustworthy, who I can give them a card or a phone number to, and let them call you.
Yeah. I've gotten invited multiple times to come to bid against some of my competitors, and my network has helped me get not just my foot in the door, but all the way through the process, just because I knew the executive director or the owner knows somebody I know, and I can be able to make that connection. So connections are
Absolutely.
really important. It's not just what you know, it's also who you know. So
100%. We're in the people game
yeah, we
just
are
as
the
much
people
as we
game.
are the business game.
When it comes to NC Farm Bureau, is your plan to continue? You're past your 2-year probation. You want to get these certifications. Is there more along the line of they want you to open your own branch, or they just want you to keep growing your book of business? How does the future look for you?
Sure. So that it works a little differently with Farm Bureau than what a lot of people think of with a traditional nationwide or state farm, where then with those two companies, you know, whomever's name is on the door, that's the agent for that building and they own that branch. With Farm Bureau, we're contracted employees through Farm Bureau, and we work out of the branches that they provide for us. So under the roof that I work here, there's 7 agents, and we are all responsible for our own book of business, and we service that book of business. We try to grow that book of business, and you know, that's the goal right now. Just keep grinding, keep growing the book of business. You know, there's opportunities within the company to move up if you want to, but that's not on my radar. Just wouldn't ever want to have the responsibility of other folks. I like taking care of me for now.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. And you're married, and you're just trying to grow what you've got in front of you, which I completely appreciate. The getting employees, they create a new level of challenges that you have to then
And
work.
you're a good person to ask about that because you just have taken on some employees. How's that
I
going?
took on some new employees in October and January, and one of them just gave me their 2 weeks notice, which was it was a plan of expansion for him. He was my intern. I took him on just to get him educated and started, and I got him started in his career, and he's growing with his career, and that's what I wanted for him. So it was good. It was a good run. We had a good 6-month relationship, but he's wanted to get full time, and I didn't have enough business for a full time associate yet. But it's working in that future that there's always an opportunity, and I wanted to make sure that he's moving along with that. So it was good news this morning on that front, and getting him to grow and get a full time job was good for him. I still have another associate, and she's doing well on her own, growing as well. So I've become a growth engine, which is good for people, getting them, learning the ropes and getting into the industry, and it's a good experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And it's got to be a rewarding feeling, being able to provide that stepping stone for somebody, because we're all just trying to figure it out at some point.
yeah, and it's like he came on as an intern. He was an English teacher. He had that good personality. He was learning the IT side of things, and it's an ever learning experience. Not everybody knows everything. I can tout myself as the expert, but I'm still learning every day. There's always new things
Absolutely.
that I'm learning. I'm constantly have my ear to the ground. I'm in a lot of MSP Facebook groups and Reddit and Discord, and there's constantly conversations going on, and all of us are working to grow our industry and make it better for our clients. Which I'm going to a meetup group tonight that's for IT professionals, and going to some more networking events this week. So I already mentioned that. So it's growing. My contact base to be able to get more exposure that's out there. 2 years of this, 7 years of law enforcement. It's been a lot of knowledge and education. What advice would you give someone who's in a career transition, who wants to get out of their career and wants to do something different? What kind of advice can you give them?
You just have to embrace it. You have to embrace it. You have to understand that you're going to be met with some struggles, and you trust those that believe you should be there. And if they don't believe you should be there, then you don't have to listen. So embrace those that are willing to help, because you're going to be surrounded by plenty of different people, and just wake up every day for the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've got to have that drive and that determination, and it doesn't matter what you do, you still have to have that. You have to wake up in the morning and have that that experience, that drive and motivation, as I said. So did you have any mentors that helped guided you along in your journey through these different transitions that you've done?
Yeah, I absolutely did. The man that hired me into Farm Bureau has since stepped down as supervisor and moved back to his hometown, which is a few hours east. But he was a huge influence. The agent that brought me in the door for an interview and talked me into it, she's been great. But really, everybody out of this office could be said to be an influence, because everybody's very positive. I think everybody wants what's best for each other, and we don't have a hostile environment. It's been very good.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and it's not the sharks, right? Trying to
Right.
get each other. You're trying to work together, right? That you can do what's called a four-legged meeting, where you have two people coming in to be able to give you that knowledge and experience when you need two people to be able to come in and be able to help drive that along. When it comes to being competitive in the field, how are you going to differentiate yourself in 2025?
Well, I think we talked about the customer service aspect, and that's where Farm Bureau really shines. We can offer everything: home insurance, auto insurance, life insurance. We can work with liability policies. We have commercial package policies if you have businesses. But instead of just putting a number on that, what are we really doing? We're going to look at everything. It's the customer service aspect is what we do to be competitive, because one day we may be better on price and the next day we may not be, but the one thing that can be constant every day is that customer service.
I think customer service is key. That's a lot of my business, is that white glove custom approach that I do with each of my clients. I have lots of different clients in lots of different stages in their businesses, and that unique approach, I think, is what differentiates an offering. And I think that's the same thing with NC Farm Bureau. I think that they've got that unique offering that's not easily replicated. Copied, sure. Replicated, no, not the same thing, right? It's you can't just copy and paste. I'm going to open up 3 branches with 25 agents, and I'm going to do the same as NC Farm Bureau. It's just not the case. And
Right.
NC Farm Bureau has been around for many years, and will be for the future. So if the folks are trying to reach out to you, if they have more questions about the insurance industry, how can they reach you?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all under my personal name, Aaron Hutchinson. Phone number is attached to those. Feel free to call. That is my cell phone number. There's an office number attached there too, but if you call the cell, you're calling me. You're not calling a work phone. So shoot me a text, leave me a message, or send me an email. I'm happy to help anybody out.
Awesome. That's great. If anybody has an IT needs that come up, or businesses that need any sort of advice or recommendations, my schedule is fully bookable at scheduleross.com. You can book time with me and we can talk and chat. That goes directly on my calendar. I open my calendar up to clients and prospects. It's always there. I don't work 24/7 anymore. I've gotten a little too old to do that, but definitely I have a lot of availability on there as the weeks progress. So Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time to come out and speak to my audience. Thanks so much.
Ross, thank you.